Well, Chris, welcome back to the show.
Great to be here as always, Gable.
It is my pleasure, brother. I guess first of all, how has your fall been?
It's been busy, a lot of miles. It's I think that's sort of the measurement of every fall is is how many miles and how many hours you're gone and all that fun stuff. How about yours?
It's been good. It's been good. I had just a banger of a dove season, probably the best I've ever had.
Nice.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of times I've picked up the bow and have started deer hunting, and I really just didn't. I didn't have anything on camera. I got on a couple new leases this year, and so we were kind of late getting everything set up. And I just kept shooting doves throughout most of October. This limits every time. I don't know what it was. Never had that. I mean, I've always had a great couple first weeks of the season, but
Yeah.
this year it was just like God was like, "Here, shoot more doves," and I was like, "Challenge
Sweet.
accepted." Yeah, so I did, and then went to Newfoundland. They say Newfoundland there, and shot a moose. So that was fun.
Yeah,
Got a
great.
got a nice bull, and then my son shot a 9 point, his biggest buck, youth weekend. And then I've just been waiting, been going out every week, multiple times, for my buck or bucks.
Mhm.
Hopefully shoot a couple. But I saw a nice like 150-inch buck opening day, and he was just on the neighbor's fence line. I was
Mm.
like, if I shoot this deer, chances are he's going to run onto the Wagner. So the Wagner, our lease butts up to the largest contiguous ranch in the United States, the Wagner Ranch.
Wow.
Yeah, hundred. I think it's like 300,000 something acres, all under one fence. But anyway, I was like, if I shoot this deer, he's going to jump that fence, and then it's
Yeah.
going to create a whole
Yeah,
headache.
yeah.
Call the game warden and be like, I don't know if the Wagner will let me go get it, so I just didn't shoot him. And I haven't seen him since then, and seen some other decent bucks, but kind of now just holding out for him. But the rut came, and the bucks just all of them are just off camera. Like haven't seen a shooter in like 10 days, so they're in lockdown right now. So give them another week, and they'll be back
Yeah.
out looking for those late estrus does, and be good news for us.
I love seeing your kids on the social posts though. That's good stuff. I
Oh, they
think
love it.
I think everybody loves seeing kids and families doing stuff on camera, so it's great.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, that's what I've been up to, and I do. I have a mule deer hunt in West Texas coming up in early December. Uh, and then we'll just after that, hopefully get into the ducks because that's really
Yeah.
my favorite thing is stuff to do with the dog.
Yeah.
So anyway, not that I'm not besmirching deer hunting. I love that too, but my first love was chasing ducks with the dog, and so it's always got a special place in my heart.
Yeah,
Um,
dogs change the whole equation, don't they? I mean, I think
yeah.
we go hunting for the dogs as much as we do ourselves.
Oh yeah, but us duck hunters are just complete degenerates. I mean, you have to be to want to stand in freezing cold water and call that a good time,
Right. 5 a.m. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. So what about you?
It's been a busy fall. I headed to Hungary. We taped a show over there for Outdoor Channel on stags and had a fun group and we got into a pile of stags and it's kind of a I've hunted stags around the world but never in continental Europe and
Hmm.
so it was fun to get there sort of where the whole game began and see the culture of Hungarian stag hunting in the roar. It was the peak of the roar. It was just you think of the elk bugle in the American West, but the roar is just, I mean, it's a cow with a bellyache meets a lion roar. It's just such a different sound with the stag. And, to get a dark forest and all that. It's kind of primordial and fun. And yeah, then got up to Hudson Bay for polar bear. It's the last of the North American 29 for me. And
Mm.
as I'm sure we're going to talk more about it. For
Yeah.
me, a lot of these things are just sort of investigating what's going on behind the story, behind the story, if you will, behind the activity. And polar bears have always sort of intrigued me because I've always kind of looked at the so-called science behind the import ban as just bullshit, and what little research I've done on it and of course wrote about it in Forbes is it's become this species has become the poster child for
Hmm.
climate change and I'm not going to sit here and say the climate isn't changing. I'm just going to sit here and tell you based on the facts that I've looked at, which is spending a lot of time now, the polar bears are doing just fine. Thanks very much. I think there's
Mm,
5 times as many polar bears now in Canada as there were in the 1950s. So
mm-hmm.
the so-called lack of sea ice because of climate change has really not impacted the bears. If anything, they're doing better than ever, and they're still catching seals without sea ice. I was there, witnessed it, saw multiple bears with seals without any ice. So they've they're apex predators that have figured out the game, and so the whole narrative behind how the polar bear came to be used as the face of climate change is really quite a intriguing and sinister story. And of course, that's what I wrote about in Forbes. It was
Mm-hmm.
which has now had 7 or 8 thousand downloads and lots of impact in the administration and elsewhere. So we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah, and I obviously want to talk about that primarily today, but I
Hmm.
am intrigued by your red stag stuff. So let's go back there. I've hunted
Okay.
red stag in Argentina in
Hmm.
2023, no, 24, and I'm taking a group back in this spring in March for the roar. So, and I have witnessed the roar. We were at the tail end, so there wasn't a lot of roaring going on, but I did see it a couple times, and it's so cool. Um, but yeah, we're going back to Argentina. That's the only place I've hunted them. Where else have you hunted red stag?
I've hunted them in New Zealand several times, and yeah, Argentina and in the British Isles and Scotland. Never in this. I've hunted them in the roar in the South Pacific in New Zealand, but what I saw in Hungary was just completely different. It was absolutely the peak of the roar. They were going crazy. The
Huh.
theatrics of these stags just chasing all over the place, and there's just it's such a throaty sound. It's such a as you walk into the woods and it's pitch black and all you hear is stags roaring all over the place, three-dimensional kind of near, far, moving. It's just pretty captivating.
Yeah. So I'm intrigued by the Scotland thing. I have a buddy that did a trip over there. He stayed in a castle and did like this. He said it was like taking a time travel back into like the 14 or 1500s when this castle was built. But
Yeah,
then
yeah,
hunting stag, and these are not the genetics you're going to see in
yeah,
New Zealand or even Argentina to some degree. But it's the experience, and I'm like, well, cool. That's something maybe. Once my kids are getting to that age where they can not stay at home by themselves for 10 days, but the grandparents can help them out, and
yeah.
they'd be fine without mom and dad. Something maybe my wife would like to go do something
Yeah,
like
and
that.
my wife went as well, and it really is sort of a his and her kind of a deal because there's all these cool towns around. We were on the edge of Balmoral,
Mm.
the King's Estate, hunting there, and it wasn't during the roar. It was a little before the roar, but we were trying to do the McNab. The McNab is where you take a stag, you catch a salmon on the fly, and then you shoot a brace of grouse, two grouse,
Mm.
all in the same day, sun up
Oh
to
wow.
sun. And it's based on a book that was written 70 years ago, whatever. So it's quite a feat if you can do it
Yeah.
in one day. And all of us in the group got a stag and shot a brace of grouse in one day. Nobody caught a salmon. I mean,
Uh,
we had sunny, hot conditions,
uh,
and we couldn't buy a salmon. So
mm.
anyway, but it was fun. It was just fun to get over there and do the whole deal. And the Highland stalking for stags over there is historic. It's classic.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, they're not the giant stags, but they're free range wild stags. Nobody's putting hands on these things. There's
Yeah.
no juicing. There's no high fence anything. These are just wild stags, and
Yeah.
that's the way they grow there. But it was
Uh-huh.
a lot of fun.
Yeah. That sounds awesome. I'm gonna have to bookmark that one for
Yeah.
sometime in the near future. Speaking of juicing, that's why I picked my Argentina outfitter. And you've booked show or hunts at SCI shows over the years, and I went
Mhm.
to every Red Stag outfitter in I think it was 2022, and whether that was some in Europe, Scotland, a ton in New Zealand, and then quite a few in Argentina. And it was like, I want to see the pictures of your stag. I want to hunt free range, but I don't
Mhm.
want to shoot a 220-inch stag. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but that's like this is not what I want because I want to take my buddies. They're going to spend some money. They
Mhm.
want to shoot a nice stag. So I found this one place, Estancia Carrizal, and they have 10,000 acres, and then they have a 1,000 acre high fence where they do breeding.
Mhm.
And he was showing me his low fence stag, and I was like, these are incredible. Like he's like, well, yeah, we released the hinds from the high fence, and we have been for like 15 years. And so yes, the neighbors shoot them.
Mhm.
We're willing for that to happen so that you guys can shoot free range. Uh,
Mhm.
we'll call it juiced. I like the word. A little juiced in the genetics stag. And so I was like, sign me up. So that's where we went, and
Oh, I love
Argentina's
Argentina.
great. Yeah,
There's a lot of great hunts down there for stag and
yeah,
Tipaluque down in southern Patagonia. That's a fantastic place. Those are very much like Scottish stags, a little bit bigger than Scottish stags, but
uh,
they're again they're free range and then you've got some that are sort of the in between where they're doing some genetic work
yeah.
and just trophy management to a degree. So yeah, look, there's depending on
Was
what you like, there's a lot of
was
options. Sure.
Patagonia a physical hunt? Because the outfitters I vetted about Patagonia, it was like stay in a pretty rustic, no frills cabin in the mountains, or sometimes a tent. And I mean, I just got back from a week of doing that for mule deer in Colorado. Didn't get a mule deer, but that's not, that's
Yeah.
gravy.
Well, Tipaluque is kind of a famous place, and it's really stags, it's boar, it's California quail that have been released that
Mm,
are now wild down there in huge numbers. They've got a migratory snipe, and then of course they've got terrific brown trout and rainbow trout fishing.
mm.
So it's you know it's it, it's really kind of you wouldn't go to me you wouldn't go to Tipaluque for any one of those things,
Okay.
but the combination of being able to do all of those things in one venue
Mm.
makes it really unique. But it's a very nice lodge, it's great food and
Okay.
all. If you're
So that's good
not roughing it.
because these were like real backcountry style hunts
Yeah,
that I was looking at, and I was like, I like to do that. My buddies don't want to do that. They like, they don't want to spend the money to go experience
yeah,
pain and punishment. They want to go wine and dine, and have good conversations with a nice glass of Argentinian red wine and a steak, which Argentina is known for, like eating freeze dried. They don't want to go to Argentina and eat Mountain House, you know?
yeah. That's one of my favorite quotes, actually. We don't go into the woods to rough it, we get it rough enough at home.
Yeah, right, right. I love both. I really do.
Yeah,
Um,
you too.
so okay, back to polar bears. I get I'm on your email list, so I get your updates whenever you have a piece featured in Forbes. Which again, very cool that we have a pro hunting perspective, scientific based pro hunting perspective put forward in a very esteemed and respected outlet such as Forbes. And the last time you were on the show was episode 728, so we're at 8 something, would have been over a year and a half ago, and we talked about a feature titled "Recent U.S. Fish and Wildlife Ruling Sparks Debate Over Elephant Hunting," which made for a great conversation on the reality of sustainable use hunting and the fact that even elephants aren't immune from that reality.
Right.
Um, Today it's polar bear. So let's see, the title of this piece, Unmasking the Polar Bear Climate Change Narrative. This one should ruffle some feathers for sure because the
Mhm.
polar bear has become the mascot for the climate change narrative. And people can't believe, oh, why would you go shoot a polar bear? Now, you actually didn't talk about the hunt itself in Forbes, and I understand why. It's easy to see, okay, well, a non-hunting reader whose interest is sparked in this conversation, if you throw in, oh, by the way, I shot this awesome polar bear and it was such a great hunt and all this, they might immediately be like, nope, I'm out. I'm checking out.
Yeah, it
So,
wasn't the purpose of the piece. I mean, the purpose of the
no.
piece was really to focus on the efficacy of a trophy import ban surrounding polar bears and generally trophy import bans across the world that simply don't work. They don't
Mm-hmm.
work. Not only do they not work, they're counterproductive, and that's a narrative that I think we're gonna, and SCI has been driving that narrative for a long time. I think sometimes they get dismissed by the non-hunting community because they're Safari Club. But in reality, they're absolutely right. And these trophy import bans are taking away the financial incentive to manage wildlife, not just in Canada with polar bears, but across Africa, as you know. And I think you probably saw recently the European Union has now said, look, we're not even going to consider a trophy import ban again. It's a non-starter. We've looked at the science of this. It makes no sense. It's counterproductive. And so I think
That's
we're
huge, by the way.
slowly,
I was
it is huge.
surprised.
I was surprised too, but there's enough even Oxford researchers that have come out and said, look, this is having a very deleterious impact, a really negative impact on wildlife in Africa. When you take the driver of American hunters away from the economic reality of conservation on ground in Africa, there is no incentive to keep those critters around, as you know. I mean, you've talked about
Hmm.
this all the time. But I think the beauty I really like about Forbes is, it's a very wealthy, very affluent audience, very educated audience, but probably not so much in this category. And yet, if you want to make a difference, we got to talk outside of our own echo chamber.
For sure. So for this piece, you actually traveled to, is it Arviat? Arviat?
Yeah, Arviat,
Arviat?
none of it.
None of it. Okay.
Yeah.
Where the heck is that?
It's on the west coast of Hudson Bay. It's part of the Hudson Bay lowlands, so it's north of Churchill, which is sort of the famous polar bear zone where National Geographic has done a bunch of specials because all these bears literally come into town. They have to capture them. They have what they call a polar bear jail where they hold the bears for a period of time until they can get them out of the city and until the ice forms and they get them out on the ice where they can go hunt the
Hmm.
seals and all that. But yeah, it's the Hudson Bay lowlands, which is really ground zero for the best polar bear populations in the world. I think the total number in Canada is about 30,000 bears, and I'm sorry, 30,000 bears around the world. About 16,000 are found in Canada, with a big majority being in that western Hudson Bay lowlands.
Okay. Okay. And you had not hunted polar bear previously. You said this was the last one to get your super slam.
Yeah, it's the last of the North American 29 for me,
Well,
and
hell yeah! Congratulations, by
well,
the way.
thanks. It's one of those that it's been I never set out to do that. I'm not a record book guy. I don't, I applaud other people that want to do that. It's not really my thing, but it was one of those. I love collecting experiences. I love going to different places, meeting new people, and introducing myself to new critters. So
Hmm.
that's the organic journey.
So, just a question out of curiosity. So how old are you?
I just turned 60, man.
Congrats! Happy
Thanks.
birthday.
Yeah, glad I'm
So,
alive.
when did you shoot your first sheep?
I was 20, I want to say 26 or 27 in British Columbia. It was a stone sheep, and it was one of those that was a total backpack hunt. And we climbed several thousand feet to get up there. I think we ran out of food day 6 of the deal. So we were living on blueberries that were all over the place.
Hmm.
Finally shot a sheep, and I was like delirious with lack of food, and we tore into that sheep to eat it like it
Yeah.
was a survival animal. And yeah, it's one of those. And it's funny, I got down to camp after that whole experience. I lost like 13 pounds, and I think I weighed 149 pounds at the
Oh
time.
wow.
And so I was, pretty much skin and bones, and got down to this little hut, and there was a hunting magazine, and John Wooters had an article in it talking about his journey for the sheep of North America. And he said, I look on my wall and I see that stone sheep, and I look with great gratitude that I'm never going to have to hunt that animal again.
So was that the hardest one of the four for you?
Yeah, it was because it was such a bootstrap deal. I mean, it was a low budget thing. I was doing a magazine piece, and the outfitter was new to the area, didn't really have any great equipment. So we were just, it was a hope and a prayer, and it worked out. But yeah, I'm not sure I'd ever do that trip again. But
Well, so 33 years ago, what did a stone sheep cost?
at the time, I think it was about 15 grand, something like that. And what are they now? 70, 80, 90, depending on
Yeah.
the scope. Yeah, I mean,
So
it's,
I think that's the number one limiting factor for someone like me. I'm 44. If unless
yeah,
I sold my firstborn child, I don't know that I could.
yeah,
Like the
right.
sheep slam's just
Yeah,
it's unless you draw, which
yeah,
you could only draw the Rocky and the desert. And then you still got to pay for a doll sheep and a stone sheep, and that's probably 100 grand right there, easy. So I don't know. I think
Yeah.
that's the most limiting factor for anybody today, my age, younger, whoever, unless you are extremely
Yeah.
wealthy. Like it just ain't happening.
Yeah, no, I mean it's a rich man's game. I mean, who knew these animals pooped gold, you know? I mean,
Yeah.
it's an amazing thing when you see the prices of these sheep.
I sat by a guy at a Ducks Unlimited banquet about 3 years ago. He was my buddy's grandfather. He was in his 80s, and he was telling me about his three sheep slams that he did in the 70s and 80s. And he was like, "Yeah, I think all in for the first one, I had about 9 grand for the four sheep." I was like, "What? I was
Yeah.
born in the wrong decade, man."
Yeah, no, I remember talking to John Wooters when I was at Hunting Magazine, and he was talking about buffalo tags for $500
Mm.
yeah, just crazy prices. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I am going on a mountain goat hunt next September in British Columbia,
great.
and that will be the most I've ever paid for a singular hunt. And I trade out a lot of stuff. I'm very blessed in this industry, and
Yep.
so most of the stuff I trade it out or get a good deal or whatever. There's no good deal on a mountain goat hunt, much like there's no good deal on a sheep hunt. You're paying full price because guess what? The waiting list is like 3 or 4 years long. So
Well, but it's such a great hunt, and my advice to you is
don't tell
go.
your wife how much you paid. So,
Yeah, well, I mean, and if you think that's expensive, let's start talking about Mountain Inyala and
oh yeah,
some of the other
Uh,
critters.
let's go get a bongo in the
But it's a great
Congo.
hunt. Yeah, it's a great hunt though. I mean, you're gonna love the experience. But if you go late season, I mean, look, the trophy to me of a mountain goat is the pelage, right? It's the coat. The horns are gonna be a couple of inches plus or minus, but it's that super thick coat. When you go late season and you get that heavy coat, to me, that's
Mm,
and I went on three different goat hunts before I finally got a goat, and I got a good one. But
mhm,
it was always late season. We were in a foot of snow, climbing up the mountain, standing on snow all the way up. It would just compact. So
mhm,
you literally sort of built a ladder out of the snow as you went up the hill. But you knew if you found one, it was going to have a great coat. You were going to have the full on trophy. So to me, it was worth the wait to get an
mm.
animal like that.
Okay. Um, so you go to Nunavut and you're going to write this piece and you're going to do your polar bear hunt. How did you decide on your guide? What was his name? Ryan St. John?
Yeah, Ryan St. John. Yeah, he had a great reputation. I had talked to several guys who had been up there and told me about it. And basically what's going on that time of year, you could do the spring hunt where it's 35, 40 below, 50 below, whatever. Or you could do the fall hunt where it's, 15 to 30 degrees.
Mm,
And the difference in the code is a little bit, but it's not really that dramatic. And I said, that sounds a little better than freezing to death in the spring. So yeah, when I talked to people who had been with him, they just raved about. And he's super professional. He's a guy that's been around the block up there. He's been operating for 25, 30 years. He's been hunting that area for almost 40 years. So he grew up there. He knows that entire
mm,
landscape. So part of the reason was the perspective, right? I wanted somebody who had been on ground in that area, could speak to just what's going on with the ecosystem, what's going on with the tundra, the bay, the bears, et cetera. I wanted somebody who could speak from personal experience, and I got it with him. He's a great communicator, and it just really gave me the perspective of, this narrative. And I'll just give you a quick background on what transpired and how the polar bear became the poster child of climate change. It's essentially two National Geographic photographers who went up there in 2017, but they went up there purposely looking for
mhm,
an image that would sell the notion of climate change having a profound impact on the environment and on wildlife in particular. So they found this starving polar bear. They found this emaciated polar bear, got tremendous footage and still photographs of the bear, and then, of course, National Geographic posts that on their website, and they had 2.5 billion views of that footage
mm,
under the banner of "This is what climate change looks like." Never mind the fact that they had no idea why that bear was emaciated. It was probably an old bear, any number of reasons. So they got they ultimately got called out eventually in the scientific community saying, hey, look, you don't have a clue why that bear is starving. I mean, bears starve to death when they can't hunt. They, physically they can't pursue game anymore and or food anymore. And so they finally had to recant the whole
Yeah,
experiment.
I read about this. So Paul Nicklin and Christina Mittermeier,
Right.
they went to Somerset Island, Canada, and they went with an agenda.
With an agenda.
Yeah,
And they admit the agenda. They
yeah,
had to admit the agenda because they were called out by the scientific community. But it was after so much damage
yeah.
had been done, right? The green groups that were selling an agenda of climate change latched onto that visual and they pushed it out to raise money, right? So it had no scientific basis whatsoever. Even though they had corrected that story in National Geographic, it became ingrained in the zeitgeist, right? That became what everybody thought, that climate change is going to destroy the beloved polar bear and God knows what else in that ecosystem. So we got to do something about it. So fast forward to the polar bear import ban actually happened in 2008 under George W. Bush, and it was Dick Kempthorne who was Secretary of Interior, an Idaho senator. And I just think they had sort of caved to this narrative that had been building, not quite as dramatic as the National Geographic footage, but had been building that climate change is really impacting these polar bears. We really got to protect them. Let's have an import ban so nobody brings them into the United States. And then most recently, under the Endangered Species Act, the Biden administration reviewed it, which you have to do every, I think, 3 to 5 years. They have to look at the status of these critters that are impacted by the ESA and Endangered Species Act, and so they affirmed it again under the notion that because of climate change, these bears are threatened, and so we've got to keep that import ban in place. So never mind that the same number of bears are going to be killed regardless of the import ban. The difference is, and this is what St. John had pointed out so effectively, the difference is you've taken away the value of those bears. So
Hmm.
instead of an American hunter coming in and spending 50 or $60,000 to hunt that bear, and tens of thousands of those dollars going into a tiny little community like Arviat with 70% unemployment, instead the locals end up killing these bears that have no value. He said in some cases we find the skins from these bears in the dump. And so basically that community is going to take 12 or 13 bears, regardless of who
Yeah, the
takes.
number of bears is not changing. The number of bears killed. So
So
the import ban is not having the desired effect. Like because it sounds good on paper. We're going to protect these bears. Climate change is killing them. We're going to no more U.S. hunters coming in and shooting them. That doesn't change anything.
well, in fact, it has a negative effect because it takes away the financial value of those bears to the communities.
Hmm.
So what happens then is, I mean, Arviat has a 24/7 bear patrol because God knows the bears are evaporating. They're disappearing all over Canada. But we still need a bear patrol because they're coming into our community left and right, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it just, none of it adds up. It's all garbage.
But I
And
did read in your piece the bear patrol actually helps. You'd think that would suck. We have to employ these people full time to, you decrease the human bear conflicts, right?
Mhm.
But they see value in that because then they still get. I guess if they have to kill a bear
It
that's
comes out of their quota.
right, that's causing problems, it comes out of their quota. Well, boom, there's $50,000-$60,000 gone. Where I mean, Mexican hunters, a lot of European hunters can still import these things.
Absolutely.
And American hunters, probably like you, are going to get a replica made. Maybe.
Yeah,
You know?
I've got a property in Saskatchewan, so it's going to stay in
Oh,
Saskatchewan, and
okay.
so it'll stay in Canada. But that's the irony of the whole thing. This trophy import ban, and again, you can multiply this narrative across the world.
Right.
It's the same deal. They're completely ineffective. They're counterproductive. That's the most important thing. Not only are they not helpful, they're unhelpful, and so we have to figure out, when do we start using truth? When do we not let the green organizations, use these narratives, these emotions to sell fundraising opportunities, and that's what they're doing. I mean, it's very clear this is nothing more than a money game for the green groups that want a poster child to create an emotion to raise money from. That's
Hmm.
it.
I hate it when they call these groups, and I was reading this article, I forget what outlet it was, but last week I'm reading this article. Conservation groups sue Alaska Fish and Game over grizzly bear cull. So Alaska
Yeah.
Fish and Game's like, well, we have too many wolves and too many grizzlies, so we're going to kill some of them because
Hmm.
science. Well, that makes people upset, and they're like, "How dare you? We don't." And that's the thing. We don't care about cervids. The anti-hunters could give a crap about cervids. Anything with hooves,
They can't
don't
raise money.
care. Don't
There's no
care.
emotion. There's
Yeah,
no emotion tied to that. You
but
take
so
an
they.
apex predator, a
Yeah.
bear, a cat, all those, you can raise a lot of money. A wolf, you can raise a lot of money off of
Oh
that.
yeah.
But it's
But they
think
called
how,
them the conservation groups. That's what I hate. Was my point was they are not conservation groups.
yeah,
We
they're
are
co-opting.
we are the conservation groups. They get labeled as conservation groups when they are doing more damage to conservation than any other entity out there.
Well, they're co-opting the language for that very purpose, right?
Yeah.
But think how condescending you would have to be as an American Fish and Wildlife Service to say to the Canadian Wildlife Service that we don't trust your science. You don't know
Mhm.
what you're doing in managing your own bear populations. Never mind you've been doing it for decades, but we're not gonna buy into your narrative that it's okay to take some bears. So we're going to put up a firewall in the form of an import ban. So the
Mhm.
whole thing is just ridiculous. And I've got an interview with the new director of the Fish and Wildlife Service coming up, and it's going to be fun to sort of, drill down into these things and get a real position from the current administration, the current Fish and Wildlife Service, who doesn't own any of this. I mean, this is, in my opinion, it's their opportunity, it's his opportunity to put this in perspective and say, wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense. We don't want to run an agency based on some weird emotional backstory. We we want to use science. And oh, by the way, let's acknowledge that the Canadian Wildlife Service is a scientifically run entity.
Mhm.
They have the same science, and it's in their backyard. So let's not somehow pretend that we know better for Canada than what their own agency does.
Yeah, well, and you mentioned earlier, just extrapolated across the globe, we do the same thing with Africa. We don't think you know how to manage your own lion population. You damn sure don't know how to do it with elephants. So no, you can't
Right.
import them. Like I've talked to my PH in South Africa, and South Africa is not even as affected as say Zimbabwe or some other places where you have more elephants. And like it really is insulting for you guys to give us the playbook and say, here's the sustainable use model that North America has developed and it's been so successful. We're going to give it to you. And they're like, okay, cool. We're going to do that now. And then they do it and we're like, slap on the wrist. No, you don't know what the hell you're doing. But you
Well,
told us how to do it.
and they don't even give them a seat at the table. I mean, can you
No.
imagine, if you're in Texas and somebody from London told you how to manage your white-tailed deer and said, and you don't have a seat at the table, we're not going to ask you what you think about managing
Yeah.
white-tailed deer in Texas. I mean, it's this condescension, it's this neo-colonial view of the stupid Africans that don't know what they're doing. Therefore, we have to be paternal and look after them. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's really kind of appalling that it's gotten to that point, but it is where we are.
Mm-hmm. Also, in your piece, though, you reference a 1984 report by the New York Times that said there was 25,000 polar bears. In 2008,
Same,
25,000 polar bears, the same
same number.
number, and we're going to ban the importation. Let
Yeah,
that
yeah.
sink in.
So nothing had changed in terms of the population, but I guess it was just well, maybe it could happen because of climate change.
Mm.
Again, it speaks to the fallacy of the whole thing, but you can imagine if the New York Times is reporting this, that they're not exactly predisposed to the right side of the aisle. So yeah, I think it's just high time. And it's funny, I interviewed Congressman Nick Begich from Alaska, who sits on the House Natural Resources Committee, and I asked him very directly. I said, as somebody who has oversight of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, what is the directive from Congress when it comes to how do we encourage American hunters to go around the world, enjoy hunting so that they take their dollars with them? We create an economic incentive. So not only should we not slow walk permits to get trophies back in, we should be encouraging American hunters to be traveling around the world, because that really is the most sustainable conservation tool we can offer Africa. We can offer.
Hmm.
And he was all over it. He said, absolutely, we should be encouraging. We should have educational campaigns talking about what hunters have done for conservation, not just domestically, but abroad. So I'm really going to be curious to see how the new director responds to some of these questions, because we're doing a 1 hour special on the whole polar bear issue for Outdoor Channel. It's not really a hunting show. It's going to be about the issue and things we're talking about right now. So we're interviewing a lot of folks that are really tight with the entire story, have a history with the story, and also have a scientific background about the story.
Hmm. Well, so go back to your firsthand perspective that you witnessed. Polar bears, okay, usually they're killing seals out on the ice. The seals come up, hang out on the ice, polar bear ambushes them, right?
Well,
And you get
that's
these
the
images
narrative.
of this blood-soaked ice. It's really cool and gory, and I mean, I think they're awesome apex predators, but that's what it would look like with every predator if they weren't killing them on dirt or grass or something. But the snow is just like, wow, that's pretty gory.
Well, but I think we were maybe an hour and a half into going up the coastline of Hudson Bay when we encountered a bear that
Hmm.
had a seal on the shoreline.
So not in the
And
ice, right?
not on the ice. There is
Yeah,
no ice. There's
yeah,
no ice, and it's 35 degrees. There's no ice anywhere. And imagine my surprise after reading about all this, right? That they can
right.
only catch seals on sea ice. So I said to St. John, I said, wow, how did he get a seal? He looked at me like, they catch seals all the time. They catch them at low tide,
Mm.
because they'll come in and they'll rest on the rocks. Sometimes they're just slow getting off or they'll catch them out in the open water. He said they do it all the time. So we go about 10 more miles and we find another polar bear with a ring seal, this 70-pound mammal that they absolutely love to eat. And so it's just like the notion that they can't catch seals without sea ice is complete fallacy.
Mm. So these seals
Sure.
come in during low tide, and then they're much easier for them to target. Sometimes they get, I don't want to say stuck, but it's harder for them to get out as quickly.
Yeah, I mean they're not concerned. They're resting on rocks and stuff, and receding tides going out. They're not in a big hurry to get out. Suddenly a polar bear circles around, cuts them off from the open water. But not only that, the polar bears are so nimble in the water, they're catching them in the water.
Mm.
So this again, the whole narrative, and we didn't see a skinny bear. Every bear we saw, which was probably 20, 25 bears in total, were all fat. They were all in great shape. It was not this, oh my God, they're going to starve to death
Mm.
soon. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and St. John said, he's lived there his entire life. He said there's a noticeable uptick in the amount of bears today as
He's
previously.
never seen more bears.
Yeah.
And the mere fact that we have, I think it was the International Union of Conservation and Nature came out with a report that said we've got 5 times as many bears today, polar bears, as we had in the 1950s. So you tell me, I mean,
Mm.
again, what numbers is the Fish and Wildlife Service looking at when they say an import ban is necessary? And
Well, they're going to manipulate that number. They're going to say, "Oh, well, in 2008 when we implemented the ban, there was 25,000. Now there's 30,000. So it's working."
right, there you go. Yeah,
Yeah.
why didn't I think of that? Yeah.
Uh, yeah. So all right. So these bears are not having a problem catching prey, regardless of the absence of sea ice. And also, did he tell you they're killing beluga whales as well?
Yeah, I had heard that like 25 years ago by a guy by the name of Doug Weber out of Churchill. I was up there snow goose hunting on the tundra, and this was early on in the process of anybody really being aware of the fact that polar bears were catching beluga whales. And I just thought, my God, the visuals of that must be absolutely incredible. And he said, look, we know where they're doing it. They've got these channels, basically these narrow sort of inlets where the belugas will come by, and multi generations of polar bears will wait in those. It's almost like Katmai brown bears and salmon, right? They
Mm.
go to Brooks Falls and they hang out. The salmon are always there and all the bears are stacked up. So the same kind of thing is happening with polar bears in certain areas and beluga whales. But yeah, they literally catch beluga whales. Imagine that. I mean, imagine watching a polar bear. And it's since been filmed. I think Nat Geo or Discovery, one of the two, had crews up there, and it's been documented now on video and film.
Huh.
Yeah.
Wow. That's interesting.
Yeah.
One of the most interesting predator prey relationships I've ever come across in 17 years of doing this. And I think it stemmed because I saw an article about it. But I actually have both of these animals mounted. I have a fisher
Mhm.
that I caught on a trapline trip in British Columbia, and I have a lynx from the same trip. And it was whatever British Columbia's provincial wildlife management agency is, they were documenting these kill sites of lynx, and it was fishers that were killing them. Now, a fisher is,
Wow. That's
I mean,
wild.
here's a fisher right there in the
Yeah.
corner, and that's about probably 1/5, maybe the size of a lynx, maybe.
So the fisher is actually killing a lynx.
Yeah, killing the lynx and preying, and then the carcass, the kill sites were partially consumed. Yeah,
That's wild.
so you wouldn't think about that, but they had, I think
That's
it
crazy.
was 8 or 9 separate documented sites. So who knows how many others there were, but yeah, pretty
Don't
interesting.
under don't underestimate those weasels.
Yeah,
Yeah.
weasels are nasty things. Yeah,
Yeah.
mean,
The
cantankerous.
mustelids are tough. Yeah.
So I shot, I trapped a wolf, and I shot the wolf with a 22 cricket from 20 feet away in a leg hold. Fell over dead. Wolverine in a lynx snare, shot it from 3 or 4 feet away. I mean, I couldn't put enough holes in it. The thing would not die.
Yeah.
So mean
Yeah.
and just ornery. And the guy was like, that was running the trap line. He was like, "All right, stop putting holes in your belt." And I was like, it's not dying. I feel bad. I got to end this thing suffering.
Yeah.
I was conflicted,
There's some
but
great video of these little stoats, these little weasels in the UK jumping on hares that are,
mm,
I don't know, 15 times their
oh
size.
yeah,
And you see it, it's like, well, there's no way that thing's going to take down that giant hare. And eventually it does. It's just,
mm,
they're vicious, they're savage. If they were 100 pounds, they'd rule the world, as they
oh
say.
for sure, for sure. Um, yeah. So I found that fascinating too. That IUCN statistical number, 30,000 bears today estimated. Population's gone up. Climate change doesn't seem to be adversely affecting them. Is that something that's just specific in that area of Hudson Bay and Nunavut? Or
Yeah, I
does
mean,
that transcend to other areas where
I'm
polar
not
bear?
sure how much is known outside of Canada because it's such a large population of polar bears. So I would be I'd be reticent to speculate that that's consistent across the entire range. I don't know,
Mm,
but the fact that half the polar bear population in the world is in Canada, it's a pretty good baseline to have a
yeah.
sense of this is probably something that you could extrapolate more broadly.
Hmm. So let's talk about the actual hunt itself.
Mhm.
What caliber did you take?
I used a 300 Win Mag and
Uh-huh.
190 grain bullets and a little bit light. I've taken a lot of bears over my hunting career, brown bears and grizzlies and black bears and European brown bears and all that kind of stuff. So it was a little bit light, but he said, sometimes these shots can be 100 to 200 yards. You're not going to be, right in tight like you might be on a brown bear, just because it's a tundra. It's wide open.
Yeah.
There's really no cover or very little cover to use. But we ended up going down the coastline from Arviat. I think we went 40 miles down the coast, and you just stop and walk in glass, and we found 8 or 9 bears. I think the first day, the first bear or the biggest bear we found that day was about 8 feet, 8.5 feet. So he said, we don't really want to shoot anything under 9 feet. We want to make sure it's a mature boar. And
Hmm.
I said, I'm all for that. It's day one. And so the second day, it was interesting. He said, look, we've got an island. I've never taken a bear off this island. It's 30 minutes from Arviat. We'll have to get in the boat and go out there. And and I think it's called Century Island, actually. And as soon as we got to the island, we got within visual of the island. We could see two white dots near the shore, and it's sure enough, two polar bears. Just kind of working around, walking around, and as we got closer, it's like these are good bears. They're both good bears. And so at that point, we waited for the tide to kind of get in the right position so we could beach the boat and get out on shore, which took a while. And once we got on the island, it's about 4 miles long, and so they had long since walked off just because they didn't want the activity of us and the boat and all that stuff. I think we went about a half hour, 40 minutes, and finally I looked kind of way down to the end of the island, maybe a mile and a half, 2 miles away, and I could see a bear out in the water, just in the shallow water on the coast. And so we just used this kind of 15-foot lip of ground that rimmed the island and kind of went down to the shore and then the water. And we just used that all the way around, walked the bottom edge of the bench all the way around to the bear. And once we got over there, the second bear was with it. And
Mm.
all of a sudden they start fighting and standing, both on their back legs, just not really tearing into each other, but sparring pretty good. And it was just one of those where you kind of go, this is such a National Geographic moment. I'm just
Mm.
I'm just mesmerized by I'm on the tundra. I'm at this point 100 yards away from, a 1,200 pound, 9 foot plus, huge polar bear. And I just, it's one of those things that always strikes me when you travel a long distance and you finally see the critter you're going after. It's hit me with bongo. It's hit me with mountain inyala. I mean, there is this take your breath away kind of moment. A leopard, first time you see a leopard, I mean, anybody who, has hunted leopard, the first time you see one over bait, it's a transfixing, mesmerizing moment that you
Mm.
just don't forget as a hunter. Anyway, so we let it play out. I mean, we were probably there 15, 20 minutes as the bears are just sparring and walking around. They weren't aware of me at all, and I just had snuck up to the lip and was set up on sticks and waiting for the right bear. And one bear had sort of like blue blotches all over it because it had been rolling in berries. The other one looked like it had been washed in woolite. So it was very easy to distinguish the two, and I'm trying to
Mm.
figure out they're both good bears. Finally, they stand literally side by side, and you could see the bluish bear was a bit bigger. And I said, all right, I'm on this blue bear, and just waited for him, and he gave me a quartering shot. It was interesting. I love that front quartering shot. Hit the shoulder, get into the vitals, so you could break the shoulder and hit the vitals.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't hear St. John, the guide. I didn't hear him say, "Don't shoot," just as I shot. But my cameraman said, "Yeah, he was saying, don't shoot just as you shot." And I said, "Well, look, that's one of my favorite shots. I mean, absolutely any animal, I love that front quartering shot just to smash the shoulder."
Yeah.
And of course, he drops to the shot, rolls around, and runs off a little bit. And I hit him two more times, and it's over. It was all pretty fast, but it's to me, it's so anticlimactic. I mean, just being there next to the bear, seeing the bears on the tundra, having
How
come
far away were you?
just 100 yards. It wasn't
Yeah.
wasn't a far shot or anything like that. So, it was it's the conclusion of a lot of things. But really what I'll remember is that 15 minutes leading up to the shot. That's the rest of it's just what we do as hunters, I guess.
Yeah. Wow, that's super cool.
Yeah.
And
Should be
yeah,
great be a great show.
uh-huh.
We got some
So
just
he's
tremendous.
rolling around in blueberries. This bear.
Yeah, and it had like stains all over it. And I sent some of my buddies some photographs of the bear. They're like, "Wow, how do you get a cool one like that?" It's where do they live? And was that like a melanistic phase? And so I said, "No, you wait for the wait for the blueberry season."
That's interesting because I've never associated. I mean, I guess you should think that polar bear are omnivores like every other bear species, but you always just
Yeah,
associate them with eating seals and being these
yeah, and they are
insane.
total carnivores. I mean, they are carnivores, and whether or not it was eating the berries or rolling around in the berries, I don't know. But
Yeah.
yeah, they're truly the only carnivores,
So
right?
they won't eat the berries. Or
I don't know. I mean, I'm a little
that's
skeptical that
interesting.
they're not eating some berries. that he just would have been rolling around in berries,
Yeah.
but I don't know.
Yeah.
But they're known as truly the only carnivores um, in the bear family, you know,
Right.
the Ursus clan.
Um, so these bears, because it is so flat and you can see forever out there, and when you're hunting them on in the snow or on the ice, that's why everybody they're dressed in complete white.
Yeah.
This is a little different. So these bears won't tolerate you getting close to them if they can see you.
No, I mean they just weren't aware. We had the wind perfectly in our
Yeah,
face,
and you're
and
using the topography to.
we had that great lip that went all the way around. I mean, it was just tailor made. The fact that they were right along that lip anyway, and the fact that it was curving around, and we could work down that and basically get, you know, really close to them. I mean, 100 yards is pretty close. So we
Yeah.
could have probably got closer even, but there was really no need to do it. So we just set up right there.
Hmm. Hmm. And what kind of bullet design did you have?
You know, I had a Nosler AccuBond. I'm a big fan of those bullets. I've used
Oh
those
yeah.
bullets a lot, and Winchester Nosler AccuBonds, and yeah, if there's for general game, if you're not using solids on buffalo or something like that, it's really hard to beat an Nosler AccuBond. I love those bullets. Now we didn't have no exits. None of the three shots exited the bear. But obviously, tracking on the tundra is not particularly difficult when you're following a white 1,200-pound animal.
1,200 pounds. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't even know that you worked or trust Nosler. I've been working with them for like a year and a half, I guess. And my son took his 6.5 Woundmore to Africa. I'm just
Mhm.
kidding. It's a great caliber for women and children. That's what I say.
Yeah. No,
But I'm out here.
excuse me.
I'm out here whitetail hunting with a 300 Win Mag. So what do I know? But no, he had great success with the AccuBond. He shot everything from Impala, probably the smallest thing he shot, or Springbuck. But then he killed some big stuff like a black wildebeest and a waterbuck. That's a 500-600 pound animal, probably 500-pound animal, a waterbuck. And dude, I mean, everything just boom, maybe they ran 20 yards. It's
Yeah,
dead.
and those are African animals, as you know, are tough. They're
Oh
they're
yeah.
tough critters, and the lethality of that bullet. And look, there's a lot of people that know ballistics a whole lot better than I do, but I do know effective kill,
Hmm.
and having done a lot of it, it's just a very effective bullet.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. Um, let's talk about this. Is totally unrelated to today's conversation, but having um, the experiences that you've had across the globe hunting big game. Let's talk about liver shots because I have seen some crazy things with liver shot animals,
Hmm.
and a couple with a bow. But then my son recently he shot his 9 point a little back, but still in the vitals. But I'm sitting there watching this buck react. He takes the shot. We're sitting in the blind. He's steady. I'm on him, Dad. I said, okay, whenever you're ready, gently squeeze the trigger. Boom. And the buck just stands there, but you could hear the wallop. It was like, I know you hit him. And his reaction, he just stood there. And I've had
Hmm.
that happen with an archery elk that I shot in the liver. It ran like 20 yards and just laid down. That's what it
Hmm.
did. This buck didn't run, didn't do anything, really didn't give any sort of external reaction other than just standing there, which was like, well, he's obviously shot because otherwise he'd have run off. I was like, shoot him again. So he racks another one in and he misses. Like, come on, dude. All right, put another bullet in him while he's still standing there. And he shoots him this time and he hits him, I think, in the back hind quarter. The deer is now facing away from us and the thing takes 3 steps and just falls over dead. But
Hmm.
when I was gutting it, I was like, just eviscerated his liver.
Hmm.
I don't know. I don't know if you've ever seen. And I shot an eland one time with a bow. We looked at the film and we were like, God, Cable, that was a terrible shot. What were you doing? I was like, I don't know what happened, but the thing ran over 60 yards and fell over dead. Well, it cut
Hmm.
the artery to the liver, and so liver shot is a lethal shot. It's part of the vitals. But I don't know. I just figured I'd ask you if you've had seen
I,
any
I,
different reaction when you've hit something in the liver. Maybe it wasn't the perfect shot that you wanted versus lungs or heart.
I mean, with elk, very often you don't get any reaction from an elk. That
Mm,
happens a lot where you can shoot them right through both lungs and they just stand there looking around and you're like, and the guide will say you missed or you shot over them or whatever.
mm,
And it's like, I don't think I did.
right.
And, all of a sudden wobbly and tips over. But I don't really have any direct experience on liver shots per se,
Mm,
but I can imagine if I got hit in the liver, it'd probably do me in.
yeah. Well, it does them in for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. Maybe I'll get somebody on someday to talk about the different reaction from different
Yeah.
internal organs hit or something like that.
Yeah.
Um,
The perfect shot book, get somebody talking about that. Yeah.
but my perfect shot is always, like you said, and some people frown on that. They're like, why are you going to waste the meat? I'm like, I still have 3/4 of a perfectly good deer. And by the way, the deer didn't run off.
Yeah.
And we can just cut out whatever, blood
Yeah.
damaged meat there is. To me, that's not a huge concern. Now with a doe, I'm not going to shoot a doe in the front shoulder. Like,
Yeah.
but on anything that is like, well, that's a trophy. I'm going to break him down right here, and then I'm not going to track him.
Yeah.
And
I love the high shoulder shot. Hard to beat that.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So great article in Forbes. Y'all check it out. The title once again: Unmasking the Polar Bear Climate Change Narrative. So we've got more polar bear. The climate might be changing, but the bears don't seem to be negatively affected as far as population goes. So, seems pretty scientific there. Maybe the Trump administration will revisit that. I don't know. You're going to have this interview with the new.
Director Nesbitt. Yeah. The new
Yeah.
Fish and Wildlife Service director. Yeah. Look, I'm just going to put it very directly to him as I did with Congressman Begich. Is it time to revisit this? Is it time to step back and not use climate change as sort of a faux narrative on the whole deal, but just to expose how we got to this point. I think most people are shocked that a couple of Nat Geo photographers went to the Arctic, with an agenda to find a poster for climate change, find a starving polar bear, and suddenly that becomes the mascot of climate change around the world,
Mm-hmm.
and they've got the platform with 2.5 billion people viewing that footage to
Yeah.
to change the global narrative on climate change.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So wrapping things up here, what other hunts do you still have on the docket for this fall?
I'm headed to Idaho for a mallard hunt. I'm looking forward to that. It's a place I've been before, and most people don't think of Idaho as having terrific mallard hunting, but let me tell you, it's unbelievably good, and especially in the late season. And then I've got a King Ranch bobwhite quail hunt coming up after that. So yeah, it'll be kind of ending the season on birds, which is I love birds, so it's fun.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Yeah, we have one of those new leases I picked up is in Childress, Texas. It's not too close to the King Ranch, but it's farther west towards the
Mhm.
Panhandle. Oh my gosh, Chris, we have so many quail. I've never been on a place with
Wow.
this many quail. I was setting up on a wheat field to hunt Saturday evening and didn't have any bucks coming to feeders. Like, I'm going to hunt this wheat field. I know there's going to be 50 does in it. If there's 50
Mhm.
does this time of year, there should be some bucks running them.
Yeah. Right.
And just walking over there from my side by side to where I was going to set up my chair and my tripod, I busted 4 coveys of quail out. I was just like, oh my God. I knew we had a lot of quail, but I got to get, I don't have, I have a labs, for mallards and stuff.
Yeah.
I need to get somebody with some bird dogs in there and, after deer season and, put
Well,
them to work.
if you've got wild bobwhite quail, you'll have a lot of volunteers. I mean,
Oh, for sure.
that's such a premium bird these days. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean,
Just-
a good quail lease can be cost you more than a deer lease these days.
yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, quail have become a currency on ground that actually has them. And if you can do cattle to the right degree to where quail benefit,
Mhm.
that's really the win-win right there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, awesome. I appreciate it. Where can folks follow along in your adventures?
Sporting Classics TV on Instagram, and yeah, watch the show Sporting Classics TV. Chris Dorsey on Outdoor Channel, and follow me at Forbes.
Awesome. Well, happy 60th birthday.
All
Appreciate the
right, man.
time, and we'll do it again somewhere on down the line, I'm sure.
Thanks, Cable. Good to see you. Take care.
You too.